So it seems like the floodgates have kind of opened in terms of the HoYoverse voice actor situation. Now, if you don't know, I covered yesterday a whole thing going on with Megan Shipman, a voice actor in the HoYoverse space, and her kind of thoughts on a lot of the strike stuff that's been going on. I've got a whole series behind this, probably around like 20 to 25 videos now, talking about everything that's been going on and everyone's accounts, all the voice actors' accounts, because let's be real, there's a lot of stuff to kind of go through, especially with the amount of voice actors that work on all these projects and the amount of voice actors getting involved in a lot of this stuff. Now, obviously, one of the big factors whenever it comes to version 5.6 for Genshin Impact is that, you know, there wasn't very many voice actors actually voicing in the Mondstadt story. People were very excited at the fact that Mondstadt was going to see a lot of the older characters, coming back to the game, and we're going to go back to Mondstadt, and it's all going to be great. But the thing is, it doesn't, have that same effect whenever all of the voices are muted. And obviously, that is the case for a lot of the quest because, there's a lot of people on strike. And obviously, one of these was Venti's voice actor, which a lot of people were very mad about because, Venti has such an iconic voice and created quite a important part of the game, which a lot of people really enjoy. And, Venti confirmed, Venti's VA, not Venti himself, confirmed on TikTok, saying that, there was some issues or something then that they might not be voiced in the 5.6 version. But it seems like we do have an update. It says Venti's VA implies that she is back a bit later into 5.6. She's rushing to record most likely, and it'll be updated through a hotfix or something. We won. They say, great work, Erica. I also hope to hear you in 5.6. Please, I'm so excited. And then they said, if you wait just a tiny bit, I think Venti will miraculously find his voice in 5.6. Now, I don't know if that is referring to the fact that, yes, they will add a hotfix later on. Again, she never actually said that. You can always add a character's voice to 5.6. And obviously they said, if you wait just a tiny bit. So maybe they're hinting at the fact that maybe in a future update, then, the voice will get added, and any new player that hasn't played 5.6 yet will then hear their voice. I'm not sure. Maybe that could be the case, but also, as this person who created this post could be suggesting, they could have actually added the voice in, halfway through, or like just a quick hotfix for a lot of the people that want to hear the voice in the game. Now, obviously, they're saying, if it can be managed, I have to give Hoyo and Erica props. Can't be a quick turn. I feel like this implies she's already recorded / currently recording. Currently recording is my guess to have it on time or be a bit later for 5.6. They add these lines through hotfixes. I hope more VAs follow. They say the wording could mean that the voice will be added later, which again, I do think could also be the wording. I know, obviously they said in a previous message that they might not actually be in version 5.6, meaning that, they weren't going to be there for the update whenever it drops, in that kind of sense. And obviously, people say, do you think a few days / weeks after the update can be enough for us to start the quest and see them whole voiced? I'm sure the sub will be flooded with threads when she does get voiced, which again is definitely that's obviously people are going to tell you whenever this is actually happening. They're saying it won't be full voice soon, since Albedo's VA is fully on board with the strike. They say, please, he needs to wake up, which again is kind of crazy because obviously a lot of the quest, as we saw with Genshin Impact, is mainly around Albedo. And Albedo isn't even voiced, which is crazy, to include a character like that. I know it's hard because there's a lot of strikes going on and you still have to make the story. But, you didn't have to make it so surrounded by Albedo unless that was the original plan all along. Because, again, it's just going to look pretty terrible whenever the character is muted. Now, we also have another response as well from Allegra Clark, who is also another voice actor in the HoYoverse sphere. Obviously, she's very popular in terms of, a lot of the characters she voices. She voices Maki and also voices Acheron and Beidou. So, again, she's very big in the HoYoverse sphere. And obviously, she replies to this post from Jennifer Hale, who's also a big voice actor / actor, I think, who has nothing to do with HoYoverse, by the way. She doesn't voice in any HoYoverse games. I don't even know if she voices in any gacha games. But she pretty much says, I want to sincerely apologize for losing my temper during our meeting. I let my emotions take over, and I take full responsibility for that. My delivery is wrong, even if the concern behind it was real. Obviously, I think she's referring to a lot of stuff that went on with the strikes. Now, obviously, Allegra Clark goes on a big thread saying, I'm not privy to anything that happens during negotiations, what the current language is or isn't, or anything along those lines. But I am genuinely scared that this strike would have done more damage to the industry than anyone could have foreseen, whether AI wins or not, which I definitely do think is actually true here. I feel like she is actually correct, and it might not actually be due to the fact of AI, it might not be due to the fact of what is going on with the protections, it's due to the own fault of a lot of these voice actors that have managed to turn the community against them. They've managed to turn a lot of people on the side of HoYoverse, which is something very rare to do. You know, a lot of people are very pro-consumer rather than anti company or whatever you want to call it. And I feel like it's hard for that, people to do that. And also an even harder thing is to get people on the side of Tectone, which they managed to do. Which again is kind of crazy, Tectone's great and all, but obviously the Genshin community don't really gel with him. So they've managed to somehow, force them to do that, which again is crazy. And obviously Tectone is very happy about that happening. Now, yeah, again, it just kind of proves to you how dumb a lot of these voice actors have been over online. That some people just don't, kind of side with them anymore. And obviously a lot of this is to do with a lot of the Blue Sky posts, a lot of the Twitter posts, a lot of the YouTube posts, a lot of the TikTok posts. All of the posts that have been going around this kind of situation have also, contributed to people, not trusting this as much. They say there's so much ugliness happening in the community: mistrust, accusations, sabotage, and fractured friendships. The stake of the strike are understandably massive. Given that they have to do with how voices are used in the future, whether we consent to it, any of it, or are paid. Which I do think is true as well. I think not only just for the fans and how people kind of, believe in a lot of this stuff that's going on, but also in terms of the friendships between a lot of voice actors. I feel like that can be broken down over a lot of the actions that are taken over this, due to the fact of them striking or not striking, or attacking someone for not striking, which I think a lot of people were very against, especially whenever Karina and her buddies went ahead and attacked, that person, Jacob Takanashi, for taking the voice of Kinich. Which again can make people fall out internally between the voice actors, not even between the fans or anything, which obviously isn't going to be great for the future at all. And I think that is another reason why it has been pretty bad for everyone. They say those stakes mean that everyone is on edge and everyone is passionate, but my god, I don't recognize the industry compared to last year. This is a nightmare, and I think it needs to end. I don't know what we gain from holding out further on the overall contract. I'm not privy to any specific language and don't know for sure whether what's on the table right now would screw us over royally, but I'm equally concerned for directors, engineers, casting, and studio people whose work has been impacted, frankly will be impacted, whether we're paid fairly for our digital doubles or not, given that they won't be hired either. I also know full well that a lot of work is leaving the US, and as someone here, I would like to keep working. Someone is to, which again, they're referring, by the way, to a lot of the companies are leaving now and going to like the UK, going to other places that can just voice for them, that don't have the problem of people just going, no, I don't want to work because I don't want to. That's just not a thing. Which again, is just much easier for the company, and they go, okay, well, we'll just take it elsewhere. And obviously, that brings a lot of jobs out of America and more towards places like the UK, Australia, Canada, wherever, the English voice, speaking people, or even in the case of Jacob Takanashi in Japan. Now they say something has to give. I don't know what that looks like or means under the circumstances. I felt like I've had to keep my head down for 9 months because it always feels like my feelings are contrary to what everyone else is saying, which it's good to see that she is actually kind of voicing a lot of her concerns with this. She says, I want a fair contract. I want to know that my voice/performance are being used with my consent. I don't like the idea of AI in art, but I also understand that big tech companies that drive game studios need to know that they're not being limited in terms of tech/innovations. I truly hate all of this and wish the SAG had stopped it outright during all the TV/film strikes in 2023, and know that the interactive Negcom is continuing to work with the hand that they've been dealt with. But for everyone's sake, this strike also needs to end as soon as possible. It is a horrible time to be a voice actor right now. Every conversation about the strike, every conversation is about AI. I'm constantly bracing myself, wondering who I can trust, who's talking about me behind my back. Fans don't trust us. We'll never fully recover from this, which is true, And obviously, the more and more I read through this, it seems like she is pretty anti-strike at the moment, which again is actually great to see. They say, I want to know my job will exist in the future, but I also want my job to exist right now, which is, 100% true. They say, if Jem was angry the other day because she cares, then I'm angry too, and we need to stop treating everyone both on the other side of the table and in our own community like the enemy, which, again, also true. But obviously, a lot of these voice actors, for example, like Karina, go on TikTok and try to alienate a lot of the audience, which obviously makes it even worse because, again, she goes out there and attacks them, which just isn't great for repairing a lot of that kind of stuff. Now, say To be clear with all this, I'm using terms like contract a little loosely because I'm not in the room and don't know what exists in writing. It's not like there's a piece of paper that nobody is signing right now. I'm under the impression there's still some stuff to discuss. Negotiations are very difficult, and I commend everyone who's participated at the table for the hard work they put in for the past few years. But it's been a few years now. Even if we been striking for only 9 months, we need to come to an agreement soon for everyone's sake. Also, I'm home recovering from a sinus infection right now, so if any of these words are wiggly, that's why. Pro tip, don't let your allergies turn into an infection, which again, you know, I think that's a very good thread there. I think it kind of looked at it fairly. She didn't go in and attack, you know, a lot of the audience for having this negative opinion of voice actors. She was just kind of talking in terms of just in general and how it sucks that, you know, everyone is talking about AI right now. Everyone's so hyperfixated. Everyone's so angry at each other. And I definitely do think that's true. And I think it does kind of, you know, add a big kind of factor to it. And it's good to see a voice actor actually talking about this, and especially a big one like Allegra Clark, who voices some big characters like Beidou and Acheron, and obviously has a clear kind of, you know, kind of, I guess, background in the voice actor space. Now, she says this thread isn't about Hoyo, guys, but obviously, you know, people say, I wish people knew that. And I do think, you know, obviously this thread could refer to a lot of other things, but even some people were saying, like, I think many could tell that your thread wasn't specifically about Hoyo, but to me, it isn't completely unrelated. Firstly, I like the communities get more insights, especially when some other VAs chose to brand them as ignorant, yet they refuse to educate in honesty. They say it's not completely unrelated at all. So again, you said it's not about Hoyo, guys, and then you said, oh, well, it's not completely unrelated, which again was one of the points that I thought was like kind of dumb, you know, especially after having such a good thread. I know it's important to kind of save face here and be like, no, it wasn't about Hoyo, guys. It's about another game. Even though, you know, you want to get out your opinion on Hoyo very desperately. They say recontextualizing the conversation about the actual negotiations between the union and union employers. Here's Allegra's thoughts on what's happening with the non-union game doesn't help anyone. Which, yeah, I do think, like, obviously framing it in the way that, oh, this is our thoughts on this particular game is, yeah. I mean, I can see why you want to avoid that, but let's be real, you are still technically talking about HoYoverse, even if you don't mean it directly, or even if you don't want it to be kind of spun as that. So again, you know, obviously I feel like it's just a situation that is evolving over time. Obviously there's a lot of people kind of reacting to this over on Twitter as well, not Twitter, on Reddit, saying that's the saddest part. Honestly, this whole situation is such a huge mess. You know, everyone's just saying it's a huge mess, and that, you know, Allegra always seemed pretty chill, so for her saying this, you have to wonder how bad it is looking from a VA side, which again is definitely true. So do appreciate more VAs speaking openly about what is happening, which again is another true thing. I think even Joe, although he had some like points that were a little bit funny in there, making that video on the AI strike, at least he actually tried to educate people on what's happening rather than doing a Karina and just going, oh, well, you don't understand it? Well, I hate you, and you should understand it. Go read a book or something. You know, I think that's just dumb. You know, and I think people explaining it and talking about it is actually so much better, and obviously people are much more responsive to it. So yeah, that's pretty much all we know about this so far. Obviously, I'll keep you guys up to date if there are any other kind of developments in the situation at the moment. But so far, it seems like, you know, this is all we've got. Obviously, Venti's VA might be making a return for 5.6, and also we had the whole thread from Allegra Clark too. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. That's all. See ya.